Hey guys, welcome back to another scrap mechanic video, and today we're gonna do part 2 in the Lua tutorial series. Last time we created an AND gate and also an OR gate by changing the code, but now I want to make a AND gate that can switch to an OR gate. So how do we do multiple functions, like interact with it and create a different mode? To do that we use client on interact. So if we just copy paste that in here, and we see this is on server and this is client part, so we're gonna put it in here. So function tutorial. Right, so that's the client on interact. Now this will be called every time you press E on the part when you interact with it. Now when you interact with it, you'll want to change the mode so that it does something different here. Now how do you do that? You'll need to do some networking. For networking, we'll go and check in Game Manager, network, user data sent to server. Because when a client interacts, only he will know that he interacts with it. All the other clients wouldn't know. So he needs to send that to the server, and then the server can broadcast that to all the clients using send to clients. So first of all, we'll want to do send to server. In the client on interact, the developers already provided us a nice example. Copy paste and done. Now server toggle means that you need to have a function on the server's side that performs this function. So server toggle, and you can provide extra arguments if you do data here, so you can send actual data to the server and it would get it here. It only allows for one variable, but you can put a table in there, so you can do more variables that way. Anyway, server toggle. This way the clients can change the mode by sending to the server to change the mode. So now the server would say self.mode is equal to self.mode plus 1. It will increment its mode, but we want it to finish somewhere so that it doesn't go infinitely to infinite. We'll want to finish at 10. So this way it will be from 0 up till 10. But self.mode is not instantiated yet, as you can see. So we need to create it. Self.mode equals 0. When the block is spawned, it'll perform on create, which will then create mode 0. Alright, so now we have a mode that changes when you interact with it. Alright, so let's create a AND gate and an OR gate and an XOR gate. Because we're only doing 3 things, I'm gonna limit it here to 3, because we only want 3 modes. Remember, an AND gate, output is false if there's no parents. If there's parents, it can be true, and if there's a parent that is not active, it becomes false. OR gate, we also already saw that. For the XOR gate, for every parent that is on, the output will flip. So if there's 2 parents on, it will be active, then back to not active. Now, let's go test this. Alright, we got an error, as you see, because output doesn't exist over here. So how do we fix that? Easy peasy. Just put that outside of these cases. So this is basically a case, switch case if you know it from another language. Switch case doesn't exist in Lua, so the closest thing to it is either an else if or a table with functions in it, which is really janky. So it's an AND gate, as you can see. And now when we do this, it'll be an OR gate, and now when we interact again, it's an XOR gate. We can add prints in the console, or we can even show it on the screen to say which mode it is in, but we want to do some fancy shit. So we're gonna add a GUI. In your scripts, you'll want to add GLOBALGUI.LUA, and that will be available on my GitHub. I still need to re-upload this because this is already outdated, and you'll be able to find this example that I'm creating right now, this over here, and the GLOBALGUI.LUA on my GitHub. Link will be down in the description below. So how do we create this global GUI? for this, you'll need to use the client on setup GUI. This is not referenced anywhere over here. It's something totally new and the developers don't want us to use it, but screw that, we're gonna use it anyway. So how do we do this? We're gonna go in here in the client part and we're gonna go in here. Function tutorial1 client on setup GUI. And basically the GUI is gonna be created here. But because this is a global GUI, which has more performance than a normal GUI, because I changed it and I made my own GUI because I didn't like the GUI from the developers. Check how many lines of code. It's a lot of lines of code. First of all, because this is a global GUI, you'll want to create this part of code. This is just copy paste, and I'll explain this all in a bit, but basically it creates a shape above the world which handles the GUI and magically does everything, really. So for this, you'll need a remote distance and a remote position. It's also copy paste. You'll want to put it over here. So these are two variables that you don't touch really. I should really handle this better, but I don't really have the time right now to put that inside the global.GUI.LUA. So it's gonna be like this for now. Once I change it, you'll see it on GitHub as well. The example will have the no format as well then. Just two more copy pastes. That's for the on setup GUI, this piece of code. And you'll also want to add this piece of code. So this basically hides the GUI when you destroy the block that you opened to use the GUI for. And then the on setup GUI, we're gonna create our GUI here. As you can see, GUI setup loading. And oh, one more thing, which is really important, is do file global.GUI.LUA. And this only works if the Lua file exists in the same folder as where your script is. So now this already created a really simple GUI test. So if we open this block now, no, that's the wrong thing. It won't do anything, because I forgot to add something in the onInteract. Right, so the GUI is created here, but it's not really saved anywhere. So where do we save it? We save it in a global thingy that tutorial1 can access everywhere. So that we do that using tutorial1.GUI. Now every tutorial1 block can use this GUI. Instead of self.GUI, self means that only that one instance of the block. So like, if we define it in self, then only this one that created it can use his own GUI. Now, this one won't be able to access that one, and then it won't work. So we need to define it in the thing like this. It's just the way I made this. It increases performance. Just believe me, all right? Right. So now that it's saved, we also need to call it. So when you interact with it, we need to show the GUI. So how do we do that? Tutorial1.GUI, and we have a function in that GUI, show. Now we can only do that function if the GUI actually exists, and if it doesn't exist, so if not tutorial1.GUI, then we just return. And basically, if there's no GUI, which can happen in some cases, then basically it exits this function, so it doesn't perform any of the other things here. Maybe we even need to print something, failed to open GUI. Otherwise, if we don't do this, it's gonna throw some errors, which we don't want. Right. Let me just destroy these shapes to get rid of the errors. And let's open the GUI. So as you can see, GUI test, and we can open and close it using E, and even escape. Right, but what if we want some stuff in here, and we want to make it a custom size, and when you hide it, it does some stuff? Well, inside client on setup GUI, you can define it to have a different width or a different height, or even let it do a function when you hide it. So like print GUI hidden, and it'll say that you hide the GUI in the thing over there here. 50 you don't touch, that's protection layers. Should really remove that. And this is auto scale. So these two you don't really need. You'll be fine without them. It'll just work. And if you don't know what the on hide does, you can also get rid of that. It'll still work. But if you do plan on doing something with on hide, which we do, because we're gonna do some custom GUI stuff, then we keep it. Now, we want to add some buttons. So how are we gonna do that? First of all, we want to know all the functions. To get all the functions, we either can go inside the global GUI and check it out over here and see, for example, sm.global.GUI, label small, or a invisible box, or a option menu, or a tab control, or a collection, and all kinds of stuff. So let's first off go with some 3 simple buttons. So local button 1 sm.global.GUI.button. Now, if you don't know what there is, you can also do print sm.global.GUI, and you'll see that there are a couple of functions. Ignore the scale X. There's a button, a create, option menu, text box, label, button small, collection, tab control, invisible box, and a label small. Button 1 is equal to sm.global.GUI button. Now, which things does the button all have? For that, we do need to check the global GUI, or you can check the example, and you'll see that a button accepts a position X, Y, width, height, a value for what it shows, an on-click callback, which we do need, a sound to play, which we don't really need, but we can use it if we want to, and we can define if it has a border or not. This is default true. Just copy paste this, and we're going to change this. So position X, we want it to be not over here on the screen, but we want it to be somewhere over here. So first of all, we need to get the XY position of the window so that we put our buttons inside this window. Now we can get the XY position like this. So now we'll have a position X and a position Y for the GUI, which is automatically calculated inside this onCreate. And we can add that in here. So bgx for background X, background Y. We want a width of 100 pixels, a height of 50, a value of button 1. For the moment, we're gonna do an empty callback function, which just prints stuff. So like clicked button 1, and basically I have a function. If you have a function always ends with end, and you can put whatever calculations you want in here and even perform functions in here. Now for the play sound, we're gonna use GUI inventory highlight. If you want to get all the sounds, there is some stuff online in the thing. There's like game managers and then audio and then sound list. And if you print this, you'll get all the sounds in the game. And then you'll be able to know which sounds there are. To add this button 1 to the GUI, we use GUI : add item button 1. It's that simple. We add the item like that. So now if we want to show this button, we can see that there is a button. Now B and U don't show up because buttons are a bit broken. Thank the devs for that. They used special things like the fonts are missing letters. You can fix this by using capital letters, button 1, or you can use a button small, which doesn't have the issue. It doesn't have the issue, or you can like use a bigger button. It's up to you. I'm gonna use the small text button for the moment. So now, as you can see, it's at the background position X and Y. So if we make it 100 and 100 here, you'll see it ends up here. So that's 100 and that's 100. And it's always the left top corner. And as you can see, when we click it, we hear a sound and we see it in chat. But we want it to change the thing over here. Like, we wanted to change the mode. How do we do that? Well, if we go and like do a function here and do self.mode is equal to something else, that is not gonna work, because this is client and this is server, and also this is a global GUI. You can't just put self in here and do stuff with self. That doesn't work. So how do we do this? We define it in the onInteract. What we can do is add a button with ID. So we can then add a button under the name custom button 1 or whatever really. And then we can find this button inside the client onInteract. So then we can do of the GUI, we check all the items, and inside the items we have a custom button where we can change the onClick. So now you see no print. It uses this no print now. So for here we can do self.GUI mode. Just an example, you can put whatever you want really, is 0. And now we're gonna do 3 more buttons. We don't need these anymore, but we do need the onClick to be defined so that we can override it over here. Now we're not gonna call this button 1 and button 1 and button 2 or whatever. We'll call this AND or an XOR. And also, save this. You'll see that it doesn't stack under each other because we forgot to add button 2. So we need to add the other buttons, but not under the same name, and you'll see them being created here. If you want to really space it properly and stuff, you can play with these values and these values and these values, and these for values of the buttons. Let's also override custom button 2 and 3 using this, like this, and then GUI mode 1 and 2. Now we cannot do server calls in the onInteract because it does show and then sets these functions, and then that's it. I cannot do a server call in here because it will get a script reference error. So how do we do this? It's using GUI mode. We are gonna use the onUpdate because we do self.GUI is equal to whatever. We can put the onUpdate and check if then we can do a server call because we're all inside onUpdate, not a function that's defined inside a variable. Take this, we're gonna change the name to change setting or something, doesn't really matter. And we're gonna use self.GUI mode. But to prevent it from going multiple server calls and doing it multiple times, we're gonna set GUI mode to nil so that it only does this if once. This change setting doesn't exist, so we're gonna create it, the onToggle, get rid of that, and we're gonna get some data. So I'm gonna call this data setting. So this is gonna be filled in here. So we can just do self.mode is equal to setting. And we don't even need that special calculation stuff anymore because we have this predefined variables. Easy peasy, right? Right. So AND or XOR. The one issue is when you change the onClick, the sound dies. So yeah, I admit I still need to improve some stuff, but yeah. What we can do is put a function play sound and just print it here. So every time you click it, it'll play that sound and change the GUI mode to 0 or whatever. As you can hear, it now plays sound again. And it's not connected, or XOR. All right, that works, but we want to change the icon. We want to do that in the client onUpdate, set frame index. We can't just use GUI mode because that's only happening once and that's really janky, so we're not doing that. But we do know from the previous video that 0 is the AND gate, 1 is the OR gate, and 2 is the XOR gate. Same for the active versions of them. 6, 7, and 8. And we're gonna use a noSelf variable. So every time you send to the server to change the setting, the server will send to all the clients the noSetting, so they know what to write in here. So the clients need to know. I'm gonna call it client noSetting, and we're gonna give it, we're gonna give them setting. So let's create this function in the client, and we're gonna remember it in self.client setting. And we put it in client setting or client mode or whatever really, and not in mode, because these variables on the host, on the player that created the world, is shared between client and host. You can abuse this glitch, but for the sake of it, we're gonna prevent that in here and not get into real bugs yet. Yet, I say. Well, global GUI is a big bug, so whatever. Client mode setting. Now, when a no client joins though, he wants to know this no setting. So, client on create, this is also when a client joins, the client wants to request the no mode. So he's gonna send to the server, not change setting. He's gonna ask the server for the setting. So request setting, and you don't give it any variable because he wants to ask the setting on the server, and he's gonna send to the client, okay, you requested the setting, here you go, this is the setting. Oh, we don't know the setting, we need self mode. So the server always knows the setting. Clients that join don't know the setting yet, so they need the self.mode from the server by requesting it, and then the server will send it back. All right. Now let's use this no mode on the client. So over here, we defined client mode, and we're gonna add that here. Now the issue is, when you didn't interact with it yet, client mode doesn't exist yet. So we need to set a default value in the onCreate. We're gonna just add self.client mode. And then we can do OR gate, and as you can see, it's an OR gate now. And we can do XOR gate. As you can see, we see an OR gate now. Awesome. So we can do anything now, but we want to save this value. We save that value on the server though. So first of all, we only save it when we change the setting. So self.storage save setting. We save the setting inside self.storage. This is again user data. We use colon to save inside user data. Now we also want to load this setting from the storage when we create the block. So we'll want to do that in onCreate. So we're going to load from self.storage. So if it has something stored, we're going to load it. And if there is a stored value, then now when you want to save some more custom stuff and you have more modes or more variables that you want to store, you'll want to store that in an array. So now when we exit the world, first of all, let's save this to an OR gate. Let's exit the world and load it again. And now you'll see it's still an OR gate. And now if you change this UV texture, you can have it have anything you want really. Like you have any icon you want, anything, and you can have it go on and off and all kinds of stuff. Right, so that is the basic tutorial on networking, interacting, and GUI, and storage. So that's a whole lot for this tutorial. And you know what? I'm gonna throw some extra thing in it. I'm gonna do an extra button 4. And in this button, we're gonna do a special function. Blow up all players. special, and we're gonna put a special function in here. Now we're gonna set the kill players to true, and inside the onUpdate server underscore kill players, and in here dot explode on this location, and then I don't know, we'll need to check over here. So physics explode, and we'll see over here we have a function that does that. Now we can ignore the shape thingy. We're not going to use that, so we're only going to use this part. So if you can see, for position we use this player.character.location, for position I mean. Level, I don't know, 10. Structure radius, 10. Oh. Magnitude, 10. Effect name. For the effect name, I'm gonna take a quick look inside the files. So we're gonna go to data, scripts, game, and explosive. And now we're gonna check for the, so over here it also does explode. When you have like canisters, it explodes. Explosive effect name. And over here we have propane time, explosion small. There's also explosion big, but we're just gonna use the small thingy. So okay, bam, explode on this location. So now when we click this, I explode, and that thing is also gone. But yeah, if anyone in the world clicks that, he's gonna explode. Like, he's gonna explode everyone. Everyone in the world explodes. So much fun, right? Boom! I love it. This is gonna be so much troll. And, oh, what if you want to not explode the player itself? Alright, let's do that. So, we want to not explode ourselves. Kill players. Why do we give it selves a click? We don't need to give it a variable. We want to give the ID of the current player. So we can go to local player, sm.getPlayer.id. So now, when we click on the button, it'll set kill players to true. When that's true, we'll do this function. It'll send to the server our ID, and when we see on the server, we receive an ID, and we want to not do this one. So if player.id is not equal to that ID, then we're only gonna explode them. So that way we prevent exploding ourselves. So now when we do this, it's not working. But if we have someone that joins us, we can explode him and only him. But it's also in a backfiring way, because he can also blow us up. But we can also code this to only blow up players that join your world, and not players, and not yourself. You as a host always have a player ID of 1. So if you put 1 here, it's always gonna explode everyone else except the host. But we want to try this when someone joins now. So I'm gonna exit the game, set the developer mode to be gone over here. So I'm gonna do that like this, and ask someone to join. So let's update this, create icons, and upload mod. Now the ultimate test for your scripted parts is doing multiplayer. When all that works without any errors in the top here, you can be sure that it works in multiplayer. So if your friend doesn't find any irregularities, and it works for him fine as well, so like he can change the thing here to OR, XOR, and it works for the inputs, then you can upload the mod to the workshop, like to the public. So be sure that everything works first before you upload it. I don't want to see any broken mods on the workshop. I do these tutorials especially for this, to see some majestic, beautiful mods on the workshop that allow us to do some more stuff. I wanna spark those beautiful genius minds of yours. Now, when we ask him to do the XOR gate thingy, we can see that he changes it. So it works. Alright, so he confirmed in Discord that the block itself does change. And now we can check. We can blow him up. And him alone. You can troll your friends like this. Boom! His car is gone. And now when he tries it... Oof! Yeah! He exploded me and not himself. So we can confirm that everything works now. And yeah, this mod is done and ready for the workshop. This is a perfect example of modes and blowing up players, and probably more stuff that you can think of, because you have the tools to create anything you want now using all these things over here. You can spawn spuds using the projectile, player fire and shape fire. Be sure, check client method, server method. You can spawn particles, effects, you can do special physics, you can get player direction, position, raycasts. Oh yes, raycasts, that's something for the next video. Alright, so we already have a subject for the next video, but if you do have a suggestion, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. And thanks for Camftroll to being here in this awesome video about the tutorial thingy majingy. And yeah, he was a special guest. If you want to be... Not sure if he's gonna be a special guest next time. If you want to be a special guest, then be sure to smack that like button. And don't forget to check out the next tutorial. See you then. Goodbye.